So, it's interesting, and this is kind of like a interview side note, I guess. Like, so your background was like in live sound, really. Like you had a really strong background in live sound. It was at the place on North 6th in Williamsburg, right? Wasn't that
Well, I mean, before that, I started at Brownies, and there was the club Brownies in the East Village, and when I first moved to the city, the first real job that I got that wasn't in a restaurant, and in fact, I quit the restaurant that I was working at, which was this great Southern fare restaurant that actually would let me do sound. They did like Cajun music, like on Friday or Saturday nights or something. So I started delivering food, and then I was cooking food, and then they had like 2 nights of, very small restaurant, bad music. Sorry for everybody who played there. I'm sure you were great. But I was really excited because they would let me do that. And then there was this club Brownies down the street, and there was this woman, Karen, who started booking, like, Sunday and Monday nights were the alternative music nights. And that was sort of at the beginning of that, as far as it being popular, like in the city. And so she had like the crappy nights. And I became like her sound guy, and then like the venue owners booked like the real shows, and then their sound guy did like the other nights. But that slowly turned into the sort of Brownies thing, and they were a really fantastic club that it's like I've got a board tape of Elliott Smith playing in front of like 6 people.
Oh, wow.
It was just such, like spiritualized, played, in there on like a freak thing. Just the amount of shows, like everybody who came up, like we did a lot of industry showcases. So there'd be shows before the regular night. Creed got their record deal, like, in that room. So that was where I worked for 10 years. And during all that time, I think that's also what set me up to, even when I talked about how I tend to record and setting up that massive system, to me, the understanding of doing that was very informed by the live arena. And mostly because in that live arena, there is no time to get shit right.
Yeah.
And things break in the middle of a performance, and the room is full with people who, paid, so there is no stop or fix or not be ready or not have a backup, or not be able to think on your toes. And it's a fantastic, training ground for that. And it also, to me, you see what performances are made of. So even that idea that in my brain, I want to capture the communication between the people, if that's the kind of band it is, came from, watching bands play and really seeing what's happening and what people are responding to. And probably more than listening to records, being informed about what music was based on what I was hearing. And I remember during all those years, some of my favorite bands, that would come through, and I'd do sound for them like maybe, I don't know, like 30 times in a year if they were playing like a lot or something, enough times that you really knew who they were, and the records would come out and you would just be like, this record doesn't sound anything like you. But meanwhile, everybody has seen you. The thing that led you to getting the record deal was this, and this is who you are. And suddenly this thing comes out. And I always attributed that to the fact that I think a lot of people who just worked in studios, even though they would see bands, I don't think they were seeing it. So I don't think they understood what the identity was that they were missing. Either way, there was always a fundamental thing that I was very driven by in terms of what I had seen in live. And that's what I've endeavored to try and capture, that sort of visceral energy. And yeah, so the North 6, was after Brownies closed. Then I started working there.
North 6, just so a lot of people aren't going to know about this in the city, but it was a very popular venue in Williamsburg. I don't know, when did it even start, in the 90s or something?
Let me see.
2010 or 11 or something.
I think it might. If it started in the 90s, it would have been like in 99 or at the very end of it. And it's interesting because I would say it was before there really was a DIY scene in the city. And I would say the thing that was really beautiful but kind of odd about the place was it was a big enough room. It's now the music hall, you know, of Williamsburg.
Oh, it's the same.
It's the same
I
space.
didn't know
So imagine that space in the hands of people, without being disrespectful, you know, to the people who opened it. They were very young people who I don't think had done this before. And so it was within the same spirit that like all the DIY venues that came after it were done, and probably the same demographic of people who were starting it with the same amount of experience, or you know, lovingly like saying the same lack of experience, but they had a room that was big enough that they were straddling between doing the types of shows that you would see in a DIY venue, but then they absolutely had like big shows.
Yeah.
And then that was, you know, the area that it was really interesting because, you know, the place was very much like a Wild West version of like a big room, because it was very much run by people who were figuring it out, you know, on their own. And so
I remember they used to have like just bleachers for the seats there.
yeah, and that was, you know, I remember, you know, because they had like rehearsal rooms underneath it, so they had like one sold out show with a pretty big artist in there who was playing a solo, so it's sort of like a stripped down version of it, and so he's like acoustic and doing like all these songs, and the room is like packed, and the tickets are expensive, and you literally hear like 3 bands like rehearsing, just coming up through, where you're just like, whoa, what is going on? Yeah, that was a pretty cool. And it was so before the DIY thing, but it was very much, I think, an early version of it.